And why don't we start off by going through some of these, and I'll tell you what prompted me to bring the legislation forward.
Okay. What about this texting?
Texting has been very controversial in that, we have all these new technologies, and one of the arguments that I got in committee is, well, it's no more dangerous than going down the road eating French fries and a hamburger and a Coke. I said, well, yeah, that's pretty dangerous too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe we should put an amendment on the bill. But basically, there's been nationwide a substantial increase in traffic accidents and traffic fatalities because people were reading their text messages instead of watching the road,
right.
and even writing text messages on the middle of the steering wheel hub. And I know all of us have seen this as you travel on the interstate highways. People that are reading text mails and appear to be. Well, anyway, it's a very dangerous situation. We know that it has caused this. The American Automobile Association had statistics that showed the dramatic increase in accidents and also fatalities. And I felt like this is just a smart thing to do. We can take our time. Well, if it's a very important email, then just pull over on the side of the road, answer your email, and then get back on the road. But definitely pay attention to the road while you're driving.
You also sponsored SB 599. That's a coastal protection reserve fund. It provides that no more than 7% of certain federal revenues generated from the outer continental shelf energy activity may be used for administrative costs and fees. What prompted you to sponsor that bill?
Well, first off, we're thanks to Senator Mary Landrieu, we're going to have a huge increase in the amount of offshore revenues that we'll get as state funds. And my fear is that, and I've seen it, where you have a big increase in funding in one segment, and all of a sudden that money gets moved away for other uses. Also, eaten up in administrative costs. I just didn't want to set up a new bureaucracy within state government. I have a new department and hire 25, 30 people to administrate these funds. It's not necessary. So my original bill was 5%, that no more than 5% of those offshore revenues could be spent on administrative costs, and the rest had to be spent on levee building, on actual projects on the ground. It ended up being amended to 7%, but still a significant or significantly less than would probably be spent if we were not to put this into law.
You also sponsored SCR 6. This memorializes Congress to eliminate or reduce the Social Security reductions known as the government pension offset in the windfall elimination provision. What was that about?
Well, a lot of people work in private industry, paying into the Social Security system, and then maybe move off into a public sector, or teachers is a good example. Teachers that teach for 30 years, and they also have a little sewing shop or maybe a tutoring center, whatever, where they're making money on both sides, on government and in the private sector, and they're not allowed to take their full retirement benefits because of that offset. So every year I sponsor this asking Congress to remove that so that people that have paid into the system get to collect out of the system. That's another issue of fairness to workers. I mean, why would we be withholding that or not allowing them to participate?
There's a lot more bills, many more bills that you have sponsored. Those were only a small snippet of the bills that you've actually sponsored while you've been in office. Are there others, some others that you'd like to discuss?
Well, the bills in the retirement bills that I had this year are basically, we're in very tight fiscal times, and being a fiscal conservative, I know that we can't afford to do things the way we used to do them. And so a lot of the bills that I had this year were to protect the retirement systems, or the integrity of the system, but we had to do some things to have some cost savings. And I had bills that increased the retirement age from 50 to 60 years of age. People are working longer today, and and just making that move saved the retirement systems billions of dollars. Also that increasing the amount of time it takes to be vested in a retirement system. What I did was got with each one of the systems. I serve on the board of directors of the 13 public retirement systems in Louisiana. And for the past couple of years, I've been talking to them about, we need to be proactive before we have something forced upon us, and we need to cut costs. And with their help, I was able to run with this legislation that a lot of times the retirement organizations, like the retired teachers and others, really fought. But I was doing it so that we can have that system available for workers for years to come, and not lose it because we insist on benefits that we just can't afford. The state of Louisiana can't afford to pay.
Now you have sponsored many bills. There are some legislative changes within the legislature. For example, when there is a constitutional change that is promoted or advocated by a legislator, many of them will require voting from the public. The public has to approve or disapprove a constitutional change. However, when we go to the polls, most of the people, and I'm included, I would say when I go to the polls, you have a list of all of these amendments, and I don't know one from the other. I've never heard of them. I don't know what they pertain to, but I have to decide with very limited information to make the decision. What is that about? What is all of these changes that occur that many people are just kind of playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo when they're deciding on their choice at the polls?
A lot of times, obviously the legislature feels that these are important changes to the Constitution, but I think a lot of things go into the Constitution that really don't belong there, that they need to be in statute form. In other words, Louisiana state law. If you're familiar with the U.S. Constitution, I know you are as an attorney, you can fit a copy of the U.S. Constitution in your breast pocket,
right?
And carry it around with you. The Louisiana Constitution has gotten so big, much like the tax code, where it's volumes and volumes. I think that we do our constituents a disservice by continuing to make all these changes through amendments instead of having a constitutional convention to have a modern constitution that takes a lot of that stuff out of there and let it go into just statute form. Or get rid of it completely.
Well,
it's not relevant.
Just like the tax code, it makes it almost impossible for me to understand it. The Louisiana Constitution.
The wording is so difficult when these things are put on the ballot. You've got to explain hours and hours of testimony in a paragraph, and sometimes it's written in a form that doesn't exactly say what it's going to do, and I've always objected to that. But anyway, I get more phone calls at election time wanting me to explain constitutional amendments that are on the ballot. And generally, what I'll do is I'll do interviews with the newspaper so that I can explain it as I see it, and also usually get invited to civic clubs at that time, so that I can talk about the proposed constitutional amendments. All the constitutional amendments have to have the approval of the electorate.
Now, you were quoted recently as saying, "I'm going to be your next lieutenant governor." Yeah. I'm going to ask you about the position and your bid for the lieutenant governor position when we come back from our next break. Join us in just a minute with Butch Gautreaux on Interview with Mike Billiot.